I'm Eben Novy-Williams, and this is the 57% growth sports business podcast, the Sporticast.
Goes for the top line. I like it. It's all right. I know it's a growth story. I know something is up. The arrow is pointing up. I do enjoy. For those of you watching on the social medium, you can see a sandwich here. It is a Kurt Badenhausen sandwich, which means we must be talking valuations. And Kurt, before we started, I told Novy-Williams he better not utilize the NWSL, one of his better ones. And of course, I would hope his response would have been never. I'm not going to go to the well too often.
No, I thought about it.
And he's like, yeah, I was thinking about it. No good. Come on. So do you like the 57% growth intro there, Kurt? You can take it away from there, but did you like it?
I like. That's the big takeaway number here. We've never seen anything like that. Looking at team valuations, 57% year-over-year growth is literally unprecedented in sports.
So what's close? Give me what have we seen in NFL, NBA? What have we seen in terms of your biggest year-over-year jump? Do you remember, or just ballpark it?
I think if you think about go back to the NBA, Steve Ballmer, new media deal. That we saw just a gigantic surge, and honestly, in recent years, we've seen big numbers with the NBA, with prices seemingly doubling in terms of the get-in price. An NBA team going from 1.5 to 3 billion in a matter of 2 years, and we've seen 30-something% annual gains. But 57%, that is, I would say, unprecedented in major sports team valuations over the last 30 years.
Now, we like it when your job is easy, and it's never easy because we know you talk to countless people, you dig, you really get down into the nitty-gritty. But when Angel City transacts and you have numbers to work on of sales, that does make your life easier. Let's lead with Angel City because they lead the way. What is it? What are those big markers, whether it's soccer-specific stadiums, media, we know the new deal. What are the markers that really buoyed the growth?
Yeah, I mean, these are valuing sports teams is part art, part science. We try to bring as much science to it as we can. Usually you don't have these kind of data points, though. If you think back to MLS, we have not seen, you got to go back to 2020, 2021 for the last team that was sold. NFL teams rarely change hands. Major League Baseball, so across the board. NBA, we've seen a lot of transactions over the last 18 months. But with NWSL, as Evan and I have talked about, you've seen basically an entire turnover in the ownership suite.
The whole league.
The whole league has been sold or is an expansion team since 2020. And so we have a lot of data points to work with, starting with Angel City, which closed the deal this summer, around 40% Bob Iger and Willow Bay purchased at a valuation of $250 million. They're also putting $50 million into the franchise that will go to operational costs and potentially new facility. They've been working on trying to find a training complex area to build on, basically since 2020, since the club was announced. But building things in California is not easy.
Come on, Stan Kroenke, help them out. Give them a little land. Come on, Stan, you got something you can give.
But you look at the top of the table. San Diego is also going through a transaction. It's closed one part of the deal. Next part is supposed to close next month. That price was agreed upon at the beginning of the year. At a blended valuation of $113 million. I think Eben might have been the one to break that story, if I remember correctly. The second tranche is at $120 million valuation.
Eben's favorite word, tranche. We should have a bell for every time tranche is used. We should have ding. And I'll tell a David Stern story too. Go ahead.
And then Portland and Seattle transacted also at the beginning of the year. It seems like ages ago, but those deals closed also in 2024. So you have 4 teams sold. You've got another team, North Carolina Courage, which right now there's an offer on the table. We'll see if a transaction can be completed.
That's Mark Lassery.
But it's wild times right now in the NWSL because of how much has been going on in terms of ownership turnover.
Let's stay on the owners for a second. Every men's league has this push and pull between the owners that have been in for a very long time, put in a lot less money than the newer owners, maybe got their money in different ways than the newer owners.
We'll call them the Wellington Mara team.
Sure. And then that tension between those groups and then newer people who put in more money to buy their teams, have different expectations.
The Josh Harris team.
MLS, I think, is maybe the best example of this. Ask an owner who about the tension between those who got in at 1994 and those who bought in 2019, and how they think differently. I think one of the most interesting things to me about NWSL is that, again, all of this turnover, and not just the fact that it's turned over, but who these people are. It is essentially a who's who of this type of modern sports ownership thinker. And there's a difference between having half of your room, your owner's room, being that people, and having 100% of your ownership room being that people. And I am really interested to see how that manifests itself for Commissioner Jessica Berman, for all the other owners, as they start to, now that the transactions have happened, you have a sense that these are the owners that are going to steward this league, at least for the near term, for a while. What they end up doing with that kind of consensus of thinker and new money, because I think it's unprecedented in sports.
Yeah, 100%. And you think about how this league was founded. I mean, it was the third women's soccer league, and the mantra when it was founded was "Do not fail." We can't have a third soccer league go out of business. So, and that meant don't spend money, because if the red ink gets too much, you might say, "I'm out. I don't want to lose this kind of money." And just be a steward for women's soccer in this country. But the new
now the red ink is quite red.
Yeah, I was going to say there's a difference between valuation and profitability.
They're losing more money than ever. And you talk to the teams, nobody likes to lose money, but they look at this, they see a path to profitability, but you need to create a certain revenue base that didn't exist. You look back to 2019, revenue, exclude Portland, was the one kind of viable business, to a degree, but almost everybody else was looking at revenue $2-3 million. That's not a viable business long term. The new group that's come in, whether it's Sixth Street, David Blitzer, Bethals, right, Carlisle, what the Seattle Sounders want to do with Seattle, they're all ready to invest. And they're looking to spend money. A lot of it comes down to facilities. Kansas City Current have totally changed how people are thinking about their buildings. 12 months ago, people looked at Kansas City. The cost that ultimately ended up at $140 million to open the first NWSL specific stadium. They thought it was crazy. Like, what are Angie and Chris Long doing?
I was going to say, can I recycle my joke that they're literally playing the long game?
But now people are all coming to Kansas City and saying, I want this. I want to be able to control my own destiny. They're all worried about 2026 when the World Cup happens in the summer. What's going to happen? We're already the second tenant, the third tenant in here. Now we're going to do the World Cup in 2026 in these buildings. What happens to us then? Or are used for training facilities. So people want to control their own destiny. They're ready to invest. And so that's why we've seen this rapid appreciation in losses, but as well as valuations. And the new CBA also has totally changed things, because it is so player centric. There's going to be a lot more movement of players, and people are going to look around and be like, well, these facilities versus these. Sure, San Diego weather's great, and I might want to be in a big market. That might translate things. But facilities are a big deal when players think about where they want to spend the next 2 years, 3 years of their life. And so those owners that are investing are going to have a leg up in terms of attracting the best talent.
So I know, Kurt, that facilities is largely the answer to this question, but something that I just don't fully understand about the economics of NWSL. As you said, none of these teams are profitable yet. Angel City, last year, your revenue number, $35.4 million in revenue, not profitable. The Chicago Red Stars, $6.5 million in revenue, not profitable. This is a salary capped league. If you work for the Red Stars or own the Red Stars, how do you think about the fact that there are teams making literally 6 times what you're making in a league with a salary cap and are still not profitable? I mean, it's kind of shocking when you think about it that way, given that another salary cap league like the NFL, you don't see this kind of dramatic difference. I am fascinated by the fact that these top teams are still not profitable. And they're, as you said, they're still spending. They're not trying to ease off to get to profitability. They're still trying to spend. And then you have teams at the way bottom making, again, 1/6 of what they're making. It just seems like, thinking about the long-term economics there for the top of the table and the bottom from a valuation standpoint, I imagine it would be disheartening in some ways for some of these smaller teams.
Yeah, I think you look at baseball as a comparison. I mean, the Yankees are not a wildly profitable team. I mean, there's
Sure.
revenue sharing there. They're paying off the stadium, but they spend a ton of money. For historically, it's the Yes Network that has generated most of the profits. When you think about Yankee Global Enterprises.
But they're spending on players largely, right? Like
Yes, they are spending on players.
the
Yes,
difference
yes.
between the Yankees spending and the Pirates spending is largely player
Is
costs.
largely
That's not
is
happening
player-
here in
Yeah,
NWSL.
correct. Although we are seeing new owners push the envelope. Sixth Street has spent a ton of money on players. Spent big on transfer. Throwing the rules out the window. They're not breaking any rules, but in terms of what they're spending on transfer spending to bring in big stars, they've been setting new records and been totally different game than what most of the league has played over
Yeah,
the
but
years.
that's the calculus. Where's the ROI? If you think it
Yeah.
is and bringing in stars and winning games, great, go for it.
Absolutely. But you talk to owners at the top of the table, and they're kind of shaking their heads a little bit, like, "Geez, I can't believe we're still not profitable with our revenue base at this." But the Angel City model has been a very different one in terms of
Yeah.
how they approach it. They donate, significant chunk of their money to sponsorships and do a lot of the community, and they do a lot with charity, and so there's a lot going on there. And when you think about the Current, who also have revenue in the same range as Angel City, it's expensive to run your own building. So there are pluses. You control schedule and you have a lot more revenue opportunities, but it costs a lot of money to build a building and then run it. They finance the building, so there's significant debt costs there as well that you have to pay back. JP Morgan is, after many banks said no to them, JP Morgan finally stepped up and said, "Sure, we believe in you, and we'll finance this."
Oh, did
But
they
for the
struggle
Red
to get loan to borrow money on the building?
Yeah. Oh, they struggle. They went to bank after bank who said, "No, we're not interested. We don't see this as a viable business, and we're not looking to loan you because nobody had ever done it before. Nobody had ever
Yeah.
built a soccer specific stadium in the NWSL for the women. So again, they're looking at historical comps where revenue was $2 million, $3 million. It's hard to wrap your head around. Well, why am I going to give you $140 million to build a building if you're?
Do you know the terms of the borrowing on that, Kurt, by any chance?
I do not know. I do not know ultimately what their interest payments are. But Chris and Angie Long have built a very strong business in Kansas City as investment professionals.
Smart to bring
So-
the Mahomeses as LPs in the business.
Yeah, they beat. I mean, all the other Kansas City teams are now trying to figure out their stadium. Are they going to be downtown? Are they not? Are they going to be together? Are they not? The Longs beat them to it, and also $140 million for a 20,000 seat stadium is pennies, right? I mean, I haven't been to the stadium. I hear it's
Well,
very
it's
nice.
it's only 11,000. It's 11,000.
Oh, sorry, I thought it was 20. My fault.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they have an opportunity to add seating, but the way it was built
Got it. Okay.
originally was 11,500, which has some owners pushing back, like, we really wish this would have been originally built as a 15,000,
Yeah.
18,000 stadium. They're going to host the NWSL championship game there. A couple owners are like, God, we're going to put in a building with 11,000 people. That doesn't feel big. But the atmosphere is incredible. The stadium's great, and so they're constantly, the feature games on national TV because the vibe is so good. It's a packed stadium, 3,000
I
plus first waiting list. So they will expand. I think after the World Cup, they're playing, assuming the demand is still there. There is room to make a bigger stadium, and
I would imagine that for other events, non-NWSL events, you'd maybe rather have an outdoor 10,000 seat stadium than a 20,000 seat stadium if you're looking for concerts or college events.
Eben, I was just going to say, gold star to anybody who can tell me how many nights a year that building is being used besides NWSL.
Yeah, I don't know right now, and I'm sure they would
It's
say
not.
they want more.
It's not. Yeah,
I
it's not.
imagine they want more. Yeah.
It's not. Yeah,
Right.
they have plans. Again, this year, similar to Sixth Street, basically getting off the ground, and from receiving an expansion bid to playing your first regular season game in 11 months. Kansas City has been in a dead sprint to get this building open, and the focus has been on the NWSL club and getting everything right for
So-
the building. But going forward, they do have plans for other events.
But
certainly
hold on, Kurt. You mean to tell me this is why you bring in certain LPs for connections, for ancillary, for synergies? You mean to tell me that Pat and Brittany Mahomes don't go to Travis Kelce and say, "Hey, do you think Tay
No
would
shot.
come on in for like 362 nights a year? No, like, just one. Give me one night, Taylor. Like an acoustic, one night only, never to be done again. We can't get that done? Is this not why you
Halftime
bring
of the
these folks
current
into your
game.
ownership group?
Yeah, Taylor Swift played 53 concerts in the U.S. last year, all at NFL stadiums. She's not doing anything less than 65.
I don't know. You present this to her in the proper way. There's a pitch to Taylor Swift here. There's a proper pitch to who comes, who the audience is. It's the intimate night, one time only intimate night with Taylor Swift and my 11,000 friends. I think that nobody over the age of 13, I think there's a pitch for her here that we make
Give her
this. They're
10%
making
of the
bracelets.
league.
Give her
a whole
10%
chunk
of the
equity.
league.
Yeah.
We can make this happen. It started here. Just know it started here.
Well,
I mean,
let's think
it's only a matter of
bigger.
time before Taylor is an LP in something.
How about a made-for-TV wedding event?
There we go.
There we
Wow.
go. Let's not just think
Wow.
global event.
Yes, of course. All right. So not the Golden Bachelor, not the Bachelor, somewhere in between. The soon-to-be retired
America's
Bachelor.
first royal family of entertainment. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. Oh, I can't wait till this happens. Tell me about the other clubs. Let's go down the list. Hold on, I got to grab my phone here for you, Kurt. I take pictures of these things. So we've mentioned Angel
Take
City,
pictures of
Kansas
these
City. Yeah, I got to go quickly here. I don't want to toggle because if I hit the wrong button, then I lose you guys. I don't want to do that. San Diego, Bay, and you mentioned Sixth Street ownership group there. Washington Spirit, Michelle Kang going global. Thorns, you mentioned the Bethals. Courage, we mentioned. Gotham, 80 million Gotham. Seattle, 78. And then the Houston Dash 74. What stands out to you? What should I be taking notice of?
Well, just the Kansas City 182 is pretty incredible. I mean, think about the top valued clubs.
I saw 182. I had to blink.
Yeah. What?
Nothing? No. Look at Evan. Look at Evan. He's dying. He's dying. I loved it.
I
It took
love
him a
Blink
second.
182.
I know. It took him a second.
You do not see Kansas City in the top 5, top 10 of valuations in any of the other sports leagues. It's pretty incredible to do that building in Kansas City and generate the revenue they have is pretty incredible. So yeah, we've seen teams like Angel City, Kansas City, San Diego, and now Bay. Those are 4 clubs that are all generating more than $20 million a year. The Boston team is going to come in 2026 and also will probably come in, hit the ground running, and be a substantial revenue generator. And if you think about teams like the Washington Spirit, Michelle Kang, who's really had her Steve Ballmer moment in terms of resetting how people think about valuations, where these clubs were selling for $2, $3, $5 million.
Well, she was in competition with Todd Bowley to get the franchise, and she went big and got it.
And blew the doors off of Bowley's bid and paid $35 million.
Right.
And that set things in motion where people are like, oh, that really opened a lot of eyes. Like $35 million, that's wild. But she has gone full steam ahead in terms of investing, looking to build this franchise up. And so you got a lot of teams that are kind of clumped in the middle right now, $65 to $80 million. And the North Carolina Courage have kind of broken out of that range. If you think about what Mark Lazary is looking to pay for it, because it is somewhat of you could argue a distressed asset, in where it hasn't necessarily had the investment revenues. Attendance at the bottom of the league this year was second to worst last year. And so it's been kind of comparable to Chicago, which we value at the bottom at $53 million. That is the expansion price and where we value Chicago right now. The most recent expansion price. Where we value Chicago right now.
Do you think North Carolina moves, Kurt?
I don't think so.
There was a lot of talk when we broke the news about Lazary making that offer. Was kind of conjecture about. I mean, thinking about this in other leagues, if there were more prominent markets beyond obviously the one more expansion team that's going to happen, There's a number of markets in the top 10 largest in America that don't have NWSL teams and won't, even if they, regardless of who they choose. If there was thought of or any conversations you heard about that team moving.
Yeah. It's certainly been speculated on since a bit, and why that number is possible if they move to a different market in light of what's going on. But I think if the deal goes through, the initial push will be to keep this team in North Carolina and see if they can make it work. Invest there. There's a lot of people that think it can be a market that works. It needs a certain level of investment to generate some support, and then if it doesn't, you have that option. But
Eben,
we don't see a lot of relocation. It has happened in the WSL. I mean, that's how the team ended up in Carolina.
Yeah.
It went from Western New York, but otherwise we don't see it. We haven't seen a lot of relocation. But to your point, Eben, if you're adding one more expansion team, and there are a lot of cities that are interested in leading bids, that is always something that would potentially be on the table down the road.
Eben, is this why I got an email, was it yesterday or the day before, from an official in the city of Cary?
I got the same email.
You guys, so it's you and I got, I mean, well, obviously, but I'll read. Oh, you got it too, Kurt?
Yeah.
Did that go to everybody or just Sportico, you think?
Probably, I think it went to three of us because we wrote the story.
Because we wrote the story, yeah, okay.
I think that was
But let me read the pertinent stanza, and maybe we'll have them on. As women's soccer reaches an exciting crossroads, Cary stands at the heart of any potential transition with the North Carolina Courage. While there may be uncertainty about what the future holds, we remain confident in our town's longstanding commitment to the growth of women's sports. So I call that a preemptive strike. Let's get our message out as the town. We don't want to lose this team.
I think that's exactly it. That's exactly it.
I think there is support. I think Steve.
Hey, you told me they were worst in attendance. Where's the support?
I think it's a function of investment, getting people behind what potentially can be in that market. Steve Malek's longest tenured owner, starting in 2017. So he is the old guard of owners who aren't necessarily looking to run up massive losses over the next 5 years.
But he's got to be looking even at LP stake something. He's got to be looking at massive return on the investment. I mean, what was the get-in price for that franchise when he bought it?
Oh, yeah. If he's able to sell this for $108 million, yeah.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. Yeah, so spend some money. Let's go. I want investment here.
It's a good soccer market, right? North Carolina is
a great soccer market,
particularly for women's soccer and
paging Charlotte North. I want to talk about North Carolina.
Raleigh, so it's a market that other sports leagues are in, kind of tangentially. Kurt, to change gears here for a second, so I tweeted this morning a chart of your NWSL and WNBA valuations together, and color-coded them by league, and it is essentially, it looks like stripes. There's 2 NWSL teams, then 2 WNBA teams, then NWSL, WNBA, NWSL, WNBA, NWSL, WNBA. These 2 leagues, there's not a lot similar except for the fact that they're both women's leagues. Basketball and soccer have very different economics. Is that a coincidence? Do you think there is something about the growth of women's sports writ large in America that has these 2 leagues kind of priced similarly, or are we going to see at some point one of these leagues, and I'm curious if so, which one you think, but one of these leagues separate from the other in terms of valuations?
Yeah, I think we talked about that at the WNBA, right? We're going to talk about what's the first $500 million franchise? We went back and forth.
There you go.
I think it's a function of where these both are. NWSL is a newer league. And arguably much newer if you think about it's only been a few years since it's been untethered from U.S. soccer. Mm-hmm. But I think it's largely a function of a handful of franchises in both leagues really breaking through and standing out, largely just pushing the envelope, largely by owners who have been aggressive, have spent money, have built viable businesses. And so whether you're talking about Angel City, San Diego, Kansas City, or in the WNBA, we've certainly seen it with Las Vegas. We've seen it with the Liberty, Seattle. Those 3 have really differentiated themselves in terms of building local businesses. With the WNBA, though, they have a nice bigger they have a much larger backstop because they actually get a national distribution that doesn't really exist in the NWSL. and will be up considerably once the new TV contract kicks in. So that is the differentiator when you think about those clubs beyond the top. The Liberty and Aces, they don't reach the top level that, say, an Angel City has or Kansas City. But in terms of the bottom of the financial table in the WNBA, it's much higher just because of that national revenue that comes in. That
We should go back to those NBA owners that early on took a WNBA team that aligned with the NBA franchise and just decided to get out of it. Like, oops, we should just talk a little conversation about regret. Like, I didn't see this coming. In hindsight, like we said, I should have held on to that franchise. And we see that, Eben, you and I talk about also, it's not just like the money, it's like who the owners are, who are the folks coming in. Yeah. I think we got to take a step back and realize, like, these folks didn't see it coming. Like, these investments were available to them at the outset, and they passed. But they are jumping in on the way up.
Yeah, I go back to that interview, Alan Waxman, who runs Sixth Street, when they bought Bay FC. One of the things he told me, I used it as the kicker in our story, was in 5 years, people are going to be saying, why wasn't this so obvious when it was happening?
And Alexis Ohanian will tell you it was obvious.
I
told you it was obvious.
He said it was obvious. And that was less than 2 years ago. So he was off by probably 4 years when he said 5 years. It happened extremely quickly.
Well, in both of those leagues, I mean, it wasn't just NWSL. I mean, WNBA, these teams sold for nothing 4 or 5 years ago. I mean, nothing. I mean, Mark Davis spent $2 million to bring the Aces to Las Vegas. The Atlanta deal, small single digits. It's the WNBA is super interesting because we haven't seen a team sell since then. So it'll be interesting.
But we are seeing expansion. We're
seeing expansion, yes. And those have been at $50 million plus additional investments into the franchise. But we haven't seen a controlled transaction, which will be super interesting if somebody decides to sell. But most of them right now are on board and want to ride this wave and see where it takes them because there's been so much growth over the last 18 months.
All right, Badenhausen, finish out with some wisdom here. You and I will talk about it while Novi tries to close the show while we talk around him because it's just, pro forma. Go ahead, Eben. Try and close the show. Kurt, how's the kid?
Right.
He's got goes to University of Tampa. He's got a hurricane coming at him. He's
on Twitter.
He's relocating, right?
You can find Scott on Twitter at Soshnick. You can find me on Twitter at Novi_Williams. The show is produced by Aaron Greenewald.
But the Badenhausen boys are okay. We're good. They have a plan.
Scott and Kurt are doing. Thank you very much to Aaron. Sporticos.
Are they asking for money for supplies?
Our social media accounts and our digital media. Matt Palacio would like you to know that you can follow the show.
So yeah, we need a little extra spending money. Good, I love it. Good to see the Badenhausen boys. They know how to do it. Good job, Badenhausen boys. All right.